welcome everyone. Our session is called Love is in the Air, and I can just feel it. I felt it last night, I've been feeling it all week. Love is definitely in the air. And the subject matter is interesting because for those of you who sat through Ryan's session earlier about AI, and a big part of the use of AI is to create content for various reasons in various ways. So our topic is really about using content and creating content in a way that creates a compelling story, and it makes your customers and your potential franchisees want to fall in love with you. And I guess that's why Lane and Brad named it Love is in the Air, because I can't think of any other reason why they would do that. We've got a great panel today. Folks who have been in the business for quite some time have some great opinions on it. I'll give you some intros and then I'll let them give you the 30 seconds on what they do and who they are. Down at this end here, we've got David Mesa, who is the Chief Development Officer with Ballard Brands. Shauna Stalker, who is the Vice President of Marketing with Blow Dry Bar. Albert Hermans over here, who I just found out is a fellow New Jerseyan.
That's right.
Who's the Vice President of Franchise Development for Floor Coverings International. And my friend down here, Ben Woodruff, who is the co-CEO of Woops, Macarons, and Gifts. And my name's Gary Ochiogrosso. I am the managing partner and founder of Franchise Growth Solutions. So we'll get right into this, and let's just start. David, you want to just give us a quick minute or so on your background,
Sure.
your company?
Yeah, David Mesa with Ballard Brands. Ballard Brands is a multi-concept franchising corporation. I oversee the franchise and licensing division. 3 brands that we franchise are PJ's Coffee of New Orleans, World of Wings, and a taqueria concept called Buena Onda. And collectively, we're about 250 units.
Great. Shauna Stalker, Vice President of Marketing for Blow Dry Bar. We are a salon franchise concept. We focus on styling hair and doing makeup. We don't do any cut and color, so that's the focus of our business. We've also just launched a couple of new brands in the last year as well. So we also have emerging concepts beyond our regular concept.
Great, thank you. Albert.
Good morning, everybody. It is the morning, right? I think. Okay, yeah. Good morning-ish, everybody. My name is Albert. I lead the awesome development team at Floor Coverings International. We're a legacy brand. We've been franchising for 30-plus years, but very recently we've had our foot on the gas as far as development goes. We got 250 franchisees, and then about 40 more or so in development. I have been with the organization for 9 years, started in operations and moved over to leading the development team a handful of years ago. The one thing that I'll also add is, even though maybe as it relates to the folks in this room, I'm part of more of a mature brand, I did start a franchisor from single unit FDD drafting and grew it to about 65. So as we're speaking about what content might look like in an emerging brand, hopefully I could lend a pointer or two. But thank you.
Ben?
Hey guys, good morning. Ben Woodruff, co-CEO of Woops, Macarons, and Gifts. We are a rapidly emerging franchise brand based out of New York City. We compete in the corporate gifting space with companies like Nothing Bundt Cake, Edible Arrangement. We started franchising in 15, from 16 to 19, grew to 52 locations very quickly. I've owned locations, run operations, franchise development, now co-CEO. So I've done just about everything in the business. So excited to share some content knowledge with you guys today.
Some content, absolutely. So I guess just to sort of pre-frame this, in what we do at Franchise Growth Solutions is franchise development for brands who are yet to become a franchise. We're also an FSO, meaning that we sell franchises for clients, but we do more than that. We add infrastructure. The back end, we do private equity and funding. So it's sort of a full 360 approach to franchising. And one of the biggest pieces that we spend time on with emerging brands is helping them understand the use of content and what content is and why it's so important in franchising. So we all know about advertising. You know, you can run ads, you can do social media ads, you can do Google ads. But content, on the other hand, not that ads aren't content, but they're different types of content. Straight content that might be a story about why, I don't know, the attributes of being in a home services brand. You're not selling anything per se, okay? You're just educating the world. You put it out there, and yeah, there might be a link to the Resi Brands website at the end of that article, but the point is that is content that lives online, and you want things that live online. So we're constantly educating our clients to create content, and it's not limited to just text. So I'm just going to ask a couple of you, like, your thoughts on, first of all, what's your definition of content? How would you describe content?
I would say almost anything you put out, right? So video, text, email, blogs, macarons. Yeah, so I would say content covers a lot of bases, from your consumer content to your friend dev content to your marketing flows, text to candidates when you're getting into franchise development process. So I think it encompasses a lot of areas for sure.
Yeah, and I agree. Content is virtually anything you put on the internet. It's not limited to text. Today, I think if you're not posting video content, you're way behind the curve, because everybody is scrolling on TikTok and Instagram, and video stops people. Makes them stop and makes them look. So that's great. A great way to create content. In terms of content that we see as consumers, I'd ask you this question, David. The difference between content that you might post to a consumer versus content that you might post to attract a franchisee, what would that look like in terms of differences?
Well, it's funny because I think one of the advantages of being an emerging brand is, as you get larger, you start to segment those two channels. You end up having a kind of a consumer-driven marketing team and a friend dev-driven marketing team. And as a smaller organization, that's typically, most of y'all are probably chef, cook, and bottle washer all in one, right? Because that's what we got to do to make our brands grow. And so I really do think that there's some advantage and some synergies with that, where you can kind of cross over some of that content. Really, at the end of it all, it's really about someone's going to want to fall in love with your brand, the idea of it, the concept of it first, and then you can lead them down other channels as far as learning more about the specifics of what it is to become a franchisee, or what is that next special or LTO that you're running, or what have you, for your specific concept.
Yeah, sure. Shauna, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I would just add, people when they're in that stage where they might be interested in franchising are really going to be looking for a lot of information. So to add on, they're going to fall in love with your brand first. In the early days, a lot of our first franchisees were people who were customers who loved our service and wanted to bring it to the people in their community. So from there, it becomes very, very informational, and showing people what you can do as the franchisor to really support them in their journey.
Yeah. Okay. Great. Albert, what would you say are some of the things that should be in content that would get a potential franchisee to fall in love with the brand?
Well, I think that love is an emotion. So if you're trying to get people to fall in love with your brand, it's what are the emotions that the best days of your operators have in business? Is it seeing fulfillment from their team? Is it delighting a customer? Whatever it is. But one of the things that I think that we all, since we're in an information world, want to put out content that's just consumable content and information. And one of the areas where I think we could all do better is saying, hey, what are the emotions we need to evoke from this video or text or what have you, that usually connects, in my opinion, much better with prospective candidates.
Any thoughts, this is for everyone here, any thoughts on where does content cross the line from being educational to being a sales pitch?
Well, I think, the consumers are a lot smarter than we think, and then even more so when you're talking about a potential investor. So they'll sniff that out really quick. If you come too hard with your pitch or with your LTO or sales process. I really do think some of the unique thing about in the position that you all are at right now is that the content doesn't have to be sophisticated. It has to be genuine, right? And so even if it's you've got your cell phone out and you're doing a morning huddle meeting with your team, those are the type of things that I think will endear a potential candidate to wanting to learn more about your concept.
Yeah, and I think that's an important point. If the content is overproduced, especially if it's video, If it's overproduced, it's inauthentic. It's inauthentic because you've spent too much time and probably too much money producing that piece, and you're not going to do that unless you're looking for an ROI. And generally, good content that's educational content doesn't take the approach that it's out there looking for ROI. So I think that's a really important point. Ben, your thoughts? Is it not on? Okay. Well, I'm using my best radio voice. Okay. So I can play to the back of the room. We don't need no stinking microphone. Okay. You do. Okay. Old people do. You gotta turn up your hearing aid, Brad, and it'll be okay. Anyway, so they'll bring up a microphone, but I'm going to ask the question anyway, just in terms of your thoughts, Ben. I mean, you're selling sort of a gift product, a love product to begin with. Where do you see, content crossing over from being educational to a sales pitch?
I mean, I would generally say most of our content is educational, just in general. So it's not sales pitchy at all. Like I pulled up some of the blogs we have written. It's more like like how do you be successful in small business, and then you blend in some cool stuff with the stores and macarons and how delicious they are. So it's kind of a balancing act for us. But we always keep it very educational. How do I start a small business? How to be successful in small business, and write content to make people successful in your franchise system.
So is at the end of the blog, how to be successful in small business, say, click here to learn how to buy a Woops franchise?
It might.
It might, okay. Fair enough. What about channels for distribution? Shauna, what channels are you using? Because writing great content, producing great content, that's fine. Now you're all dressed up. Where do you go? So where are you distributing content to reach folks who really are the persona of your customer on the consumer side or the persona of your franchise buyer?
Right. So we look to amplify everywhere we can. So anytime we write up a press release, we were going to make sure that we then take that and we put a blog onto our website. We're going to make sure that we're directing people from our consumer website to our franchising website to read that. We're going to make sure that we're posting it on LinkedIn. We don't post any of our Fran Dev stuff on our consumer Instagram, but that's a different story. So we're always going to make sure we're trying to amplify. We will look for ways to take blog topics and then reverse engineer them to turn those into press releases. So we're always just looking to get the most out of any piece of content we're making.
So you have different channels for different reasons?
We do. I mean, we're a beauty brand, and the majority of people who are following us are either following us because they're stylists or they're following us because they're consumers. So we don't overdo it with anything Fran Dev on Instagram or Facebook. We save LinkedIn for that. The one other thing I'll say is we always print up collateral, and we do things in our bars, so that when people come in, they know that we are a franchise opportunity. Every one of our locations has a decal in the window that says it's individually owned and operated by a franchisee, and then we'll have other collateral that people can pick up to direct them to learn more about the franchising opportunity.
Jerry, I'm not sure if we're going to go into this or not, but one of the things that she mentioned that I think is important is she mentioned having a specific Fran Dev website, and so that is obviously as coming out the gates, that is likely your first investment into the marketing space for franchise recruitment. And as we're talking about all these various channels that we're trying to, attract people with, we should be driving them to that Fran Dev website, and then that's really when the content and the business can start, right? Then and depending upon your brand persona, that could be a playful site, but more likely it's going to be an investor-driven, catering specifically to franchise candidates.
Okay, and that's a great point. Your website is a point of content, a big point of content. Sometimes it's the very first place that they're reading or learning about the brand, because they may just be doing a Google search and the first thing they come upon is your franchise development website. And what you said is key. Again, with an emerging brand, sometimes what we see when we take over a brand is that it'll really be the consumer website, and then there's a button or a little page about franchising. And the first challenge there to overcome as a new franchisor, as an emerging brand, is to recognize that, you know, you're not, if you're running pizza shops, you're not in the pizza business anymore when you go into the franchising business. You're in the franchise pizza business. So your website is no longer selling pizza. Your website is really educating people who want to buy a pizza franchise. So I'm glad you brought that up, because I you know, duh, for me, for not bringing it up, not bringing it up in advance. It's telling me turn this button on. Okay, the button's on. Anyway, so from a different channel point of view, Albert, this is for you, because you're doing like floor covering, so like, I don't know, no disrespect, it's not like a real sexy thing.
I disagree wholeheartedly, by the way.
I'm sure you do, but I guess, you know, the challenge there is how are you creating content that people are thinking, oh, I just have to do this?
Yeah, so the two platforms that we use the most, and right now we're talking a lot about content for, I guess, prospecting franchise candidates, but the other place is within the sales process as well. So this is a Fran Dev forum, so you guys all have a sales process. So I'd say our YouTube channel is extremely important to us from the front end. So not only the website, but video is really where you capture that emotion as opposed to just the text and pictures that would traditionally live on a website. And then in the sales process, there's a platform that we use called Vidyard. And Vidyard is a program that allows a candidate to unlock videos essentially as they go through a sales process. And the videos are timed for the curriculum that we follow in our sales process, so that and we also get a notification from the program if the candidate has or has not watched the video, so we know if they're coming into the conversation prepared. But video is the short answer to the question.
Yeah, and you know, one of the things, and I'm going to point out Resi Brands again because I just love them, content should tell a story. So if you're using video, some of the things that the Resi folks do with that one painter, some of their video content will start out with, okay, what did this home look like before they showed up to paint it? And then, you know, 30 seconds later, this is what it looks like afterwards. And it might seem like something super simple. It might seem like something super simple, or, hey, I don't know about, you know, how exciting it is to show a before and after of a home being painted. But when you have 25 or 30 seconds to tell that story, there's no better way to tell the story. Right. That's because from a consumer's point of view, it tells a story. From a franchisee's point of view, it tells a story. Here's what you'll be doing. Here's how you're helping people. And that tells the whole story in a matter of a few seconds. What about things like the process? Like, what's the process in your organization, Shauna? How do you create content? Do you have a marketing team? Does somebody sit there and just come up with an idea? What is that process?
Yeah, so we do, you know, we're at a point where we can rely heavily on external agencies to sort of tell us where we need to be focused. But over time, we've had to do a lot of that ourselves before we got to a point where we could afford to work with all these wonderful agencies. And it really would be about trying to get to the root of what's universally what franchisees are looking to get out of this process, out of investigating and researching your brand, and what are those things that are really going to prompt them to want to go with you. So, you know, we're always like, how can we find ways to illustrate our support system, you know, our ongoing training, our on-the-ground training, all of those sorts of things. So it is collaborative between marketing and the sales team, but I do have to be transparent that we do rely on agencies to tell us, you know, what we should be focusing on.
David, how are you approaching that?
Well, I feel like I'd rather talk a little bit more about as an emerging brand, maybe the approach that I would take.
I'm glad you brought that up, because emerging brands don't necessarily have budget for marketing companies, so the process has to still take place.
Exactly, and I think first and foremost, you know, make sure you have a rock solid franchise recruitment process. So you want to make sure you have that done. And when we started out, and when we had just a handful of brands, it was a PowerPoint presentation. It was a series of calls. We had a PowerPoint presentation for each call, and we kind of laid that out for the candidate and sent it to them. Talked over the telephone because we weren't using Teams or anything at that time. But so it was just it isn't something you have to go out and hire agencies. If you can do that and you can afford to do that, absolutely. There's tons of talent out there. So I think that's first and foremost is establishing your process, and then again getting it on that FranDev site. One of the things that is extremely important is being as transparent as possible on that FranDev site, because again, you're competing with every other candidate. So if someone's calling you, they're likely looking at other brands, and you want to make sure that you're giving them as much information as possible to endear them to want to pick up the phone and call you. It's really, again, it's an emotional process, but there are data drivers that are going to motivate that candidate to pick up the phone and reach out to you or fill out that inquiry form to say, hey, call me.
Yep.
And so I think so that to me would be part of it, and first and foremost is to make sure you have that process, make sure you're getting all of that content on your FranDev site, and then there are all these other channels that can help drive, and again, drive traffic to that FranDev site, and then you can start to, get them into your funnel.
Yeah, good point. I would also say keep some of that content not necessarily immediately visible on your FranDev site. Have a pop-up come up that maybe you're ask them to download a report on floor covering or on the business or the industry, so that you can at least capture some data from the person that's at the site. You can capture their email address. I mean, you could capture their name a lot, but if you're asking for too much, they're going to go away. So you can actually distribute content through your FranDev website in a way that allows you to capture not a full-fledged lead, but you know who the person is. Via their email, and then you can follow up with a drip campaign letter. You can reach out to that person because they have some interest, even if it's just to follow up with them to ask them, hey, now that you've downloaded our franchise report, do you have any questions? So content it can be used in a variety of ways, and sometimes it's multi-channel. So what I just described is a telephone call along with a downloaded brochure after someone Googled something and ended up on a FranDev site. So there's a lot of different ways to get there. Albert, what sort of process do you use at Floor Coverings?
So I think it starts with, for me, is having an overload of information. So I think it starts with understanding what your key drivers are to attracting somebody to want to be part of your franchise organization. So what are your top handful of franchise owners really love about the business opportunity, and then making sure that you have a flood of content. Again, for me, specifically in video, the whole flooring not sexy thing we can talk about later, but I'll jive with you on that for a second. But for me, it's specifically on video because of that, and so we heavily populate our YouTube channel. So we're all on video all day, whether it's Zoom or anything else, and you just hit the record button, you send it to a virtual assistant at Upwork to splice it up, and you chop what could be a 20-minute recording into 15 videos. So that's my.
That's a brilliant point. So Albert mentioned Upwork. So for those of you who can't afford a marketing company or an ad agency or a PR firm, there's a lot of tools out there that you can tap into to get the same type of work done. Is it going to be on the same level? Maybe, maybe not. But it'll be on a level that you can afford, and doing it is better than not doing it. So if you've got a bunch of video content that you need edited and curated, you'll definitely find somebody on Upworks who can do that for you. If you don't have a marketing company who can do it for you. Just in terms of like posting content, how often do you post content on, say, LinkedIn and on Meta, the different channels?
Yeah, quite a bit. We actually built our own marketing agency in South America a couple years, or over the last few years, because we got tired of paying marketing agencies.
Tell us about that.
Yeah. But so we have a full team, so it's great. So we have content writers, we have social, all the folks down there that take care of all of it. But quite a bit. We're a very social brand, so we're a very visual brand. We do a lot of work on TikTok, Instagram. I would say we're posting daily on those channels. I'd say probably at least once a week or twice a week on LinkedIn, something like that. Okay. We do, I believe, we're doing 2 franchise blogs. So I'll actually work with the content writer on that, since that's my sort of expertise. But AI has been so valuable for that.
Oh, we're going to talk about that.
We can just bang it out and
we'll get to that. But you mentioned blogging, and blogging, a lot of people think that's old school. It is to a certain extent, but we always recommend 2 or 3 blogs a month on your website so that you have fresh content on your website. So if someone happens to, and what I love about Google versus, say, Meta, in terms of lead generation, if you want to think about this, is that when a lead comes into your website through Google, there's intention behind it. There's been intent. They've Googled something, teach me about whatever. And then the fresher your content, the more relevant the content in your blogs, the more likely it is to come up. So you really help with the SEO, which, again, I've heard people say SEO is dead. I don't consider it to be dead. I think it's dead if you don't know how to use it. In terms of posting, how often do you post on the channels?
So we would be posting so we're posting blogs at least twice a month on our FranDev site, on our consumer site, about the same, they're just different content. We're posting daily on Instagram, hourly on stories. And then on LinkedIn, we're posting at a corporate level at least once a week, but then senior management is posting on top of that.
In my world, which is a weird world, but in my world, if a potential franchisee is learning about your brand and hits your website or sees a piece of content like a blog up on Google and goes to your Facebook page and you haven't posted anything for the last 3 months, what you're saying is you don't care.
Yes.
And if you don't care about that, that immediately sets up a very uncomfortable scenario in my head that why would you care about me? Or this company really doesn't do a lot to market their brand. Why would I get involved in a company that doesn't market their brand? So that image, what you're putting out there, is not only based on how often, but also how the lack of content. So you want to keep that going. Dave, you got something to say on that?
I was just going to mention it. Yeah, that's probably one of the biggest faux pas that I see is you get on these consumer sites or FranDev sites, they'll start a news feed on there or a blog, a blog history feed, and you go to the site and you see that it hasn't been updated in a year. The last story was posted a year ago. It definitely speaks volumes for
content needs to be fresh. So you need to constantly be coming up with new topics, and I want to talk about that, like new topics, relevant topics, listening to the news and finding out what's going on in the news and how does that relate to my brand, and can I create some content that relates to that, because people unrelated to what you're doing may be Googling something about the topic that you're writing about that's trending, and all of a sudden your blog comes up. So you want to stay sort of in the news or on top of things. How do you decide what topic to write about? Is there a methodology? I know in the world of PR and what we do with our clients, if they have a PR firm, they have a marketing company, or if they don't, what we do is we look at the editorial calendars of trade publications. Like for us, we do a lot of restaurants, so we'll look at Nation's Restaurant News or Restaurant Business, and we'll look at, okay, in September, NRN is doing this, and we'll start to create content around that, because when they're out there pushing that content, people are becoming engaged in that content, and we want to sort of ride their coattails. So how are you determining what to write about, what to post content about? Anybody?
We get the team together and we do brainstorming sessions once a week just on things, because again, I know I'm stating the obvious here, but you don't want to write about how much sales or how much growth you're experiencing and things like that, right? So it's really more industry led topics. We might write a story that's about the emergence of chai or whatever, right, in the food and beverage world, and that will kind of generate interest from various individuals. Again, at the end, there's going to be that tie-in that's going to hopefully drive some traffic to your consumer or FranDev site, but it's really about trying to find those interesting topics that aren't that aren't viewed as just a a marketing story.
I have something to add to that. So anytime we welcome a new franchisee into our system, we will do an interview with them. We will get to know everything we can about them, and we will put that in our back pocket. And a lot of times our blog content will be about a particular franchisee or something like that. And having that bank of knowledge helps us so that when there is something that's trending or there is something out there in the world that we think we have something we can say about, then we can always go back and reference that we have these interviews with franchisees. And it's also always great content just to highlight top performing franchisees as well. So really good topics there.
Yeah, and that kind of takes us into the next question. I think you cheated, you looked over here or something. But using franchisee testimonials is a great piece of content. Okay, it's third-party validation. It's not quite as good as someone visiting or calling a franchisee, but they're right out there. Putting validation from franchisees on your FranDev website, having videos of your franchisees, with, hey, don't believe us, listen to our franchisees. So, Ben, how do you use franchisees as testimonials to your brand?
Yeah, we do the same thing. I love the interview thing. So just going back to the how we put together content, we put together a list of stuff based on a bunch of different things, but depending on what's going on that month, we prioritize new franchisees, new openings. We write about that first and bump whatever that topic was to the next 2 weeks or whatever, just to kind of create that excitement or momentum or new location opening or whatever it may be. So,
yeah. Albert, how do you do franchisees? You use testimonials?
Yeah, absolutely. So yeah, we once a month we'll do something. Normally it's aimed towards the broker world, but we'll bring a couple franchise owners on a Zoom call, have the consultants come into the call, and then we'll take that video, the recording, splice it, so we'll have franchisee testimonials. And then every time somebody goes through one of our training classes, they sit down for a 15, 20-minute interview that we splice up a few times too.
Yeah, that's great. One of the points I want to make is that some of you may think, to write content means, okay, I've got to sit down at my desk with my computer and now I've got to write something. I believe creating content is just looking around, being awake, see what's going on in your brand, see what's going on in your industry, seeing what's going on with your competitors. Another way that I create content is if I'm on a website, if I go to a website, let's say it's a competing restaurant, I will take that URL, even though ChatGPT does not go on the internet anymore, but it will, but when it was, and I would ask my AI to give me topics based on what it's learning from this website. And I'm not going to plagiarize the website, but the AI will give me a list of things that website is talking about. From there, I can create content. And if I have a topic, I'm good to go. The rest is fill in the blanks. So the use of AI, and I know Ryan was talking about some really sophisticated stuff, and that's all great. But if you bring it home and you bring it down to what you need as an emerging brand, you can use it simply to create topics of what you want to create content about or content for your brand. So with sort of AI as the little topic here, or as a little heading, any of you using AI to create content?
I love AI. Yeah, we use it. Too. Yeah, it makes. I wish I would have had it a lot sooner. But yeah, we use it to write everything. We've also integrated into our franchise development process. We have an AI tool that communicates with a lead as it comes in. It can read the salesperson's calendar, book the appointment. So we're not even using lead screeners. Our sales guys really are just picking up calls on kind of the intro call. So that's another area we're using it in. And then I have my whole team bringing back each department, what is the best AI tool for that department. So we're trying to kind of sort through all of them and use the right ones now.
Yeah, it's happening really fast, so it's hard to keep up. Shauna, are you using AI at all to create content?
Not to create content, just to get content out there. We're a little bit maniacal about our brand voice, and I haven't had the greatest experiences when we have tried to use it to write content. But we love it for amplifying it.
So that's a great point. You cannot go into ChatGPT and write in. And by the way, the more specific you are with the directions to the AI, the more it learns and then the better the product will be. But I've never experienced where you can go in and say, write a blog about X, and that it's going to create content that you could just cut and paste for a variety of reasons. First of all, it's not always accurate, okay, so you have to check the accuracy. To Shauna's point, it's not necessarily in your brand voice. It's just this generic sort of thing, but it's a great starting point. So if you get an outline, if you get an article and then you rewrite it into your voice and you make it yours, it really cuts down on the time and effort, especially if you don't have a marketing company. And I think Dave said before, you know, as an emerging brand, you're probably wearing all different hats. Well, the less time you have to wear the marketing or the writer hat, the better off you are. So using AI is critical, could be a critical tool in that. Albert, how are you using AI in your brand?
Whenever you have just a moment of where do I start? The folks on our team that do some of this stuff, it's like, okay, well, what's the title for the LinkedIn post today? So just start with AI. So LinkedIn would be one area, and then blog as well.
Yeah. And again, I would tell you, if you see an interesting post on LinkedIn, take that title of that post, or take what that post is talking about, put it into your AI, and see what comes back, because you may be able to add to that, or talk about the same topic in a different way, or from your point of view, or the benefits. And by the way, I haven't used that word yet, but people who know me know I always talk about don't sell features, sell benefits. People don't really care about features, they care about benefits. So your blogs and your content should always talk about benefits. So AI can really help in that way. So I'm going to ask everyone for a last word, and then we'll open for questions, because I want to stay on time here. I got to make up some time for Lane and Brad, because their watches always run slow. Any last words on this topic?
On the AI topic?
No, on content in general. Love is in the air. Don't you feel it? Come on.
But I, just to reemphasize, because we are talking a little bit about specific content and stories, industry trends, things like that. That's one. But also, more importantly, starting off as emerging brand, again, it is about making sure that the candidate or the consumer gets to feel what your brand is all about. So all that video, kind of leverage your franchisees, employees. We do a barista of the month where it's literally the franchisee holding their phone and just introducing their favorite barista. Right. And that is the kind of content that I think will attract individuals. They start to imagine themselves in your business and going, hey, I really think I can do that. Yeah.
I want to add two things to that. First of all, what David just said is human, creates engagement. And I don't know who said it yesterday. Someone said in one of the sessions yesterday, culture eats strategy for lunch. I think that was the quote. Okay? That is culture. Showing off your team members, showing off your franchisees. Any last thoughts on the topic of content?
Just don't be afraid to invest the time and money. I know it can be hard when you're getting started, and there's a thing with content. There isn't always that direct ROI or tangible ROI that you would get from something like PPC, but you can't do PPC unless you have some great content to put behind it. So don't be afraid to make, it doesn't have to be a huge investment, but just don't be afraid to make the investment in content first.
Mm-hmm. Albert?
There were three little things I wrote down to just sum up my thoughts. And you're not going to be able to read it by handwriting.
I
It's
don't have
terrible.
my glasses on.
It's terrible. It's hieroglyphics. You can't do it. So number one would be just you and your team, and if it's just you, then just for you, articulate and be very clear about what the emotional benefits are of your franchise opportunity. So what is the buyer or the prospective franchisee going to feel like when they're operating their business on their best days? If you know that, then you could begin producing content that's appealing. So that's number one. Number two would be, it's really hard to think about content to produce for today, but it's not so hard to think about what content we should produce over the next few weeks. So if you're ever having I don't know what to post today, or I don't know what the message should be for today, say, okay, well, then what would the plan be over the next handful of weeks? What types of things? And it's easier to pull out of that hat than it is to try to think of something now. And then the third thing is you don't have to be perfect. Be like Nike, just do it, or be like Red. I mean, Red just pulls out his phone and just does it, right?
He's the master of on-the-spot content.
Just do it. Just do it, because the more content that's out there, the better. And you'd be surprised how candidates will say, oh, my goodness, I saw that thing. And you're like, I didn't even know anybody would even find that. So just do it.
Yeah. Ben?
Yeah, I would just second that too. I was going to say the same thing. You know, whether it's consumer marketing or fran dev marketing, people are looking for authenticity, and that's the most important thing. And just putting it out like consistently. And the other piece I wanted to mention, I think like historically, we have kind of put fran dev marketing and consumer marketing in kind of two different silos. You know, we've worked hard at kind of integrating those two. You know, looking at things like we're franchising on your social pages and things like that. You don't want to fully infiltrate one, you know, in the other, but like just, you know, layering in franchise development stuff, franchising, and your consumer stuff very strategically, I think is very important as well, and something that, you know, everybody should be doing.
I agree. For those of some of you may have brands where your Facebook page or your social page for your franchise company may have whatever 500 followers, but on the consumer side you've got 105,000 followers. Don't be afraid to drop a franchise message into that feed every once in a while. I think to Ben's point, don't overdo it, but you may have some customers out there lurking who are like want to get involved and they don't even know that you're franchising your business. So if you've got that level of audience on your consumer side, try to optimize that. Okay, let's open this up for any questions for the panelists. I'm sure they will have the answers. So we've got one way back in the room. Just speak up. I'll repeat the question if we don't hear it up here too well.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like a lot of great content that your company would want to do, right? And takes a lot of time and energy and potentially resources, whether you're doing it in-house or externally. And I'm just kind of curious if you feel as though, like, this is the kind of stuff that you got to do to kind of keep up with the Joneses. It sounds like some of the conversation has really been around, well, you can't really put your finger on the return, but the other piece that I'm not really hearing is these grand success stories that have also come from the fact that these videos and these posts and all this stuff is being plastered at all these media sources. Like, what's keeping people internally excited to want to continue to put that kind of time and energy into something that, how do you really see the result on the back end of it?
All right, there's a couple of questions there, I think. I think part of it is, why do it? Okay, and maybe the other one is, how do you know it's working? Is that sort, because you said keep up with the Joneses. I don't know that it's about keeping up with the Joneses. I think it's about, this is the way the world works, and you want to stay out there. I don't know how anyone monitors their posting. For me, I can tell you that it's supportive of it supports the story. It's not like someone is going to see it and call you up and go, hey, I saw your LinkedIn post. Although I will tell you, we walked yesterday, I had a couple of people go, oh, I saw your thing on LinkedIn, and yeah, that happens. But it's really, everything works together. I have this saying, nothing works a lot, but everything works a little. So you have to do a lot of different things. So yeah, you might not be able to look at some dashboard and say, oh, my Facebook page got 5,100 views and I didn't get any leads out of it or whatever you're looking for, but it certainly supports the grand effort. Any other?
Yeah, I would say like if you're very metric driven, it can be difficult sometimes and frustrating. It is for me sometimes, but you also have to look like what is the cost of not doing it, you know? Like if I go to a brand and I'm gonna invest in a franchise and like you don't have an Instagram page, like I'm out, you know? How do you measure that metric? You know what I mean? So I think it's super important. I think it's also important to understand like the video, the social, like there's very few like, you know, Kim Kardashian posts and, you know, you pick up 1 million followers. Like those are like 1 in a million.
Thankfully.
Yeah, exactly. But it's really amplification of your brand and what you're already doing. So your core of what you do really well and, you know, your great franchisee story or whatever it may be, it's just amplification of that. And it's super important.
Okay. Anyone want to add to that question, and we'll just take another one? Good. Here we go. Got another one here.
I want to talk about organic and where do you find organic plays best? We're really trying to enter into LinkedIn more. So how organic should we be there? And I know we're not going to be 100% organic in LinkedIn. Does anybody using more organic type things within LinkedIn?
Or any of you guys?
Like more content from your owner or something like that?
I mean, Not as much, I think, for our brand, but I do myself personally, like as a leader of the brand, will post, very organic content, videos on this, that, or the other thing. So I'll do it on kind of a personal level. I don't think as much on the brand level.
Yeah, I think if you're talking about LinkedIn and specifically, it's a different animal in the sense that you have the opportunity to target people in a different way. If you're doing actual spend, you can really target people. But if you're not, if you're building a following, then what you want to begin to do, and this doesn't happen overnight, okay? This is like years. You want to connect with people who are in the same type of business or have the same type of interest, and some of those people will start to follow you. So as you post content that's relevant to that audience, they may share it with other folks. So that would be an organic way of doing it. It's a slow process. It's a very slow process. I think Ben said, there's not a lot of Kardashians. You're going to get 5 million followers overnight. So it is a method, not the method. Is a method. Red, did you have a question? Oh, did you have a follow-up? Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, where do you find organic most effective? Is it just on Meta, just on?
I don't think it's one place. I think it's dependent on your brand a little bit.
Yeah, that's the point.
You
You want to be everywhere.
Yeah.
You want to be everywhere, and you can cross-utilize a piece of content. You don't want to have duplicate content on multiple sites because Google will crush you for that. But if you have a blog on your website about XYZ, you can take a piece of that and you can now post that on your LinkedIn site with a link to your website. So there's just a teaser there about, hey, learn more about XYZ, click on it, goes over to the website.
And technically organic, if you're looking at organic marketing for franchise development and what's most effective, it's referrals. So it's franchisee referring another franchisee. So if you don't have a campaign right now targeting your current franchisees for referring you and or your existing customer base knowing about your franchise opportunity, that'd be a place that I think technically for organic would be the most effective.
And learn how to, and I got to get to Red's question because I know it's going to be good, but I know it is. So no, but one other thing on that point. So Elise and I she was a guest on my Mastermind Minutes 2 weeks ago. I don't remember when. So when I posted that, okay, you click on it, it goes to my YouTube channel. Okay, that's nice. You can watch a bunch of stuff. But when I posted that on LinkedIn, okay, I made sure when I wrote her name on my post, I put the little @ So now I shared it with her. It's kind of like tagging in Facebook. And she and everyone on her staff shared it. So it got huge play. So what your hashtags are, what you're, like how you're sharing it, all of that stuff matters. It really, really does. Red.
I forgot. We hear a lot of stats, but today's consumers getting 80% of the information about your brand before they ever talk to your brand. Oh. And so where they're getting that information, oftentimes Google and the search engines, and so the Google and the search engines love third-party content. They love other people talking about you in a non-salesy format. So in creating content and getting that awesome content on the third-party news sites and other sites that are very credible with Google, therefore credible with the consumer, any success or advice on getting awesome content, whether you created or somebody else did, on those very high-quality platforms?
I'll tell you what I do. Again, it's hard to monitor the effectiveness, but when I do a post very often, I'll tag IFA or I'll tag like I was tagging Springboard, because there may be folks who are looking at the Springboard page that now see my post because it's up there. So I'm trying to keep the connections as relevant as possible. I don't want to connect with whatever, so that's how I do it. I think to get on some of the other sites, you can use backlinks. There's a bunch of other things that you can do. That's how I see it. I don't know if you...
And also tag, your early adopter franchisees are going to be ultra passionate about your brand. Make sure you're including them. Encourage them to comment. Continue the conversation. I think that can help expand the audience as well.
Yep.
I'm hearing social media, but I'm not hearing news sites, third-party sites outside of your own social media.
We use a PR agency. We use Fishman. So, they do great work, but that's a place that we underspent in the past, and recently we started actually making a concerted effort. Fishman.
We use them
The reason why I'm sitting up here, you can thank Brad. But anyway, that's been huge for us recently, and I've seen a dramatic difference.
And to that point, and I think to Reg's point, for a little bit of money, okay, you can post your press release or a story on like restaurantnews.com or Franchise Wire, okay, which I think is an IFPG piece, right? Maybe, okay. I think to Red's point, he makes a really good point, and it's just something that a lot of emerging brands don't realize. And I'm old enough to remember that the first time a prospective franchisee got any information about a brand was when they talked to a sales rep. Today, they've got most of the information. They're just calling to kind of validate and get the process going. So whatever they're learning outside of your sphere of influence, meaning you talking to them, has to be accurate, relevant, and compelling, and authentic. Because if it isn't, you'll never get in front of them. You'll never have the opportunity. And I think, to Red's point, third-party validation, making sure content is there, where are people consuming information? They're consuming it out there, and then they're coming to you. Alan, you had a question.
Yeah, so I think if you're an emerging brand, we're only about 2.5 years in, so I still think we're emerging. But I would say it's so intimidating to do what you're talking about when you don't even have support teams built out. Focus on your training. Your training material is what you put out, and that training can be content. It can double as content, and it really helps you kind of kill two birds with one stone. A lot of your training videos, all your training content can double down and be stuff that you throw out on your socials, and then you're able to utilize both. I'm very curious. You guys have a little bit more established brands. I hope you have really robust trainings. I would expect that you do. Talk to me about unique strategies you have there. How is your training content, which is what you put out to franchisees that they buy from you, your best content? Because if it isn't, it should be.
Anybody want to comment?
Again, I'll apply it to us. We do a lot of content where it's the build of a beverage, right? So part of the training process is when you have a barista in one of the stores, they're getting filmed, so it kind of gives them that little extra pressure on how they're building that beverage and tapping it off. And so taking that exact same content and putting it and pushing it out, showing, hey, come try our perfect.
It's
whatever,
absolutely amazing what people will buy into. We have a brand called Burrito Boulevard. They have videos of just someone like rolling a burrito. And you go on their Instagram page or their TikTok page, it's got like 20 million views. What is this? So it could be anything. You want to have stuff out there. We got time for one more question. Anyone else? Way in the back there. Speak up.
Thank you. Just a quick question about LinkedIn. I know, Shauna, you mentioned this, and this may apply to others. How do you determine which content goes on the brand and which one goes on individuals affiliated with the brand, like your managers?
It just depends. So anytime we're opening a location, so today I'm going to shameless plug for Blow, we're opening 2 new locations today, so we're pretty happy about that. So anytime we open a new location, we're making sure that that's going on the brand, on the Instagram, on the LinkedIn, everywhere like that, and we're tagging the new owners and things. Then senior management's expected to amplify that on their own. When we sell a new franchise, that will usually go through our VP of franchise sales and the rest of the franchise sales department. So, the way we've determined it is kind of like what's going to feel most authentic coming from which channel. So, we do occasionally post franchise stuff on our Instagram, but our Instagram's more about showing people great hair and makeup tutorials. So to your point, that training and your point. So it's really just, and a lot of it's trial and error. Like we used to post lots and lots of franchising stuff on our consumer Instagram and we were losing followers. There wasn't the engagement. So at the end of the day, we can't sacrifice that and build, because that's all about building brand awareness. And the more you build your consumer brand awareness, the more people are going to want to buy into your franchise. So it's watching what performs.
So 2 things I'll leave you with. Everyone out there should connect with everyone up here on LinkedIn, okay? And if you've liked what you heard, please send me a sticker, okay? Because I need stickers for my computer. Thank you to the panel.
They did a great job, right? Come on, come on. And thank you all for being here with us, and enjoy the rest of Springboard. I think lunch is served probably in about 5 minutes.